Imagine being ridiculed for wearing an old, faded jacket. People laugh, mock, and judge, not knowing the powerful story behind it. But what if the jacket you're wearing held a secret so powerful that it could change how others see you forever? Stay tuned to find out what happens when a general recognizes the truth hidden in plain sight. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a like. It really motivates us to keep bringing you more exciting content. Now, let's get into it. It was a quiet afternoon in the coffee shop, the usual hum of conversation blending with the clinking of cups and the soft buzz of laptops. Sara sat at a corner table, nursing a cup of coffee, her eyes drifting over the pages of a book she had been trying to read. But her mind kept wandering, mostly back to the jacket she wore, a worn, faded military jacket that had accompanied her through some of the toughest moments of her life. It wasn't the most fashionable piece, certainly not a designer item or something that would turn heads for all the right reasons. The fabric was soft, frayed in places, and the patches, each one symbolizing a milestone in her military service, had long lost their vibrant colors. To anyone else, it was just an old jacket, a relic of the past. But to Sara, it was everything. Each patch told a story of strength, sacrifice, and survival, of missions completed, battles fought, and friendships forged in the heat of adversity. It was her personal history, worn proudly, even if the world didn't always understand. Across the room, a group of people were talking loudly, as people in coffee shops tend to do. Sara tried to ignore them, focusing on her book, but then she heard the laughter. "Look at that jacket," one of the women said, her voice dripping with mockery. "She looks like she's stuck in the past. Does she think it's still the 90s? Who even wears stuff like that anymore?" Another person joined in, snickering. The words hit Sara harder than she expected. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. They didn't know the story behind the jacket, didn't understand what it meant to her. She had grown used to the laughter, the whispered comments, but today it stung a little more. She was just a woman in an old jacket, but to her, it was so much more. It was a symbol of everything she had been through, and everything she was proud of. Sara's thoughts began to drift, carrying her back to a time when the world seemed simpler, yet infinitely more demanding. She remembered the day she joined the army, right after high school. It wasn't a decision made lightly. She had always felt a deep sense of duty, a drive to serve her country and make a difference. The army was a way to challenge herself, to step up in a world that often felt too small for her aspirations. The years that followed were not easy. The training was relentless, pushing her to physical and mental limits she had never known. She endured harsh conditions, long hours, and the constant pressure to prove herself. It wasn't just about learning to fight. It was about resilience, about becoming someone who could endure and succeed no matter the odds. And the deployments, the long months away from home, in dangerous, hostile territories where every day felt like a battle for survival, had tested her strength in ways she could never have imagined. Through it all, the jacket she wore had been her constant companion. It had been with her during the long nights spent preparing for missions, through the exhausting drills, and the quiet moments when she would stare at the stars, reflecting on everything she had been through. The patches on her sleeves weren't just symbols. They told the story of her journey. They represented the mission she had completed, the respect she had earned, and the countless moments of camaraderie with fellow soldiers. Each patch was a badge of honor, marking milestones that only those who had walked the same path could truly understand. Now, as she sat in the coffee shop, the jacket felt like a relic. To the world, it was nothing more than an outdated piece of clothing. The faded fabric, the worn edges, none of it mattered to the people around her. They couldn't see the stories hidden in the seams. They couldn't understand that the jacket wasn't about style. It was about the strength she had found in herself, the woman she had become. Just as Sara was beginning to push the harsh words of the coffee shop out of her mind, the door to the cafe swung open with a soft chime. She didn't think much of it at first, until her eyes were drawn to the man who had entered. His presence was commanding, unmistakable. He was older, with a posture that screamed discipline and authority. His uniform was impeccably neat, military grade and gleaming with medals and insignia that told stories of battles won and time served. His every step exuded confidence, and there was something in the way he carried himself that made heads turn. The bustling coffee shop fell into an almost unnatural silence as he moved through the room, his eyes scanning the faces of those around him. Then, his gaze landed on Sara. Her heart skipped a beat. It was as though time itself paused for a moment. Sara had never forgotten the man standing before her, General Roberts, one of the highest-ranking officials she had worked with during her time in the military. He was known for his stern demeanor, unwavering leadership, and no-nonsense approach. He commanded respect from everyone around him, but he had always been a mentor to Sara, a figure of guidance when things were tough, both on and off the field. The general stopped mid-step, his eyes locking onto her jacket. His gaze didn't falter, and for a brief moment, Sara could feel the weight of his recognition. Something shifted in the room. The chatter from the nearby table faded into the background as the general took slow, deliberate steps toward her. The tension was palpable. It was as if the air around them had thickened. Sara stood up, her mind racing. Was it just the jacket, or did he see something more? Sara, his voice was deep, almost reverent, as though he was seeing something far more important than just a woman in a coffee shop. Sir, it's been a while, Sara said, her voice betraying a mixture of surprise and familiarity as she managed a small smile. The general nodded, but continued to stare at the patch on her jacket, his expression softening. That patch. Where did you get it? His question was not casual. It was laced with a profound respect and curiosity that made Sara's heart swell. For a moment, Sara was at a loss for words. She had worn that jacket for years, never expecting it to draw much attention. It had become a part of her, something comfortable, familiar, and deeply personal. But now, standing face to face with General Roberts, a high-ranking officer who had witnessed some of her proudest and most difficult moments, Sara realized the significance of this moment. She hadn't anticipated anyone, let alone someone like him, noticing the patch so intently. She lifted her hand to her sleeve, where the faded insignia was carefully stitched. This, Sara said, a small wave of vulnerability crossing her face. It's from my time in the military. The Special Forces patch. It's a part of me. The general's face softened, his eyes reflecting something more than just recognition. You earned this, he said, his voice filled with genuine respect. You were one of the few selected for that unit. I remember, at that moment, Sara felt a rush of pride that mingled with a tinge of vulnerability. The jacket, once a simple piece of clothing, suddenly felt like a part of her history, her strength, and her journey. It wasn't just faded fabric. It was a symbol of everything she had endured. It represented her resilience, the sacrifices she had made, and the place she had earned among the best. To hear those words from someone like the general, who had witnessed her struggle and triumph, was more than she could have expected. The group of people at the nearby table, who had once mocked her jacket, were now watching intently, their expressions shifting. The amusement that had once been on their faces was replaced with curiosity and something else, respect, maybe even a little awe. They had no idea what this jacket meant to Sara. They had no idea that it represented years of sacrifice, valor, and loyalty. They had no idea who she really was. The general's voice brought Sara back to the present, his admiration clear in every word. I had no idea you were still wearing that. It's an honor to see it again. His gaze held hers for a moment longer, as if acknowledging not just the jacket, but everything it represented. The transformation in the room was immediate. Just moments before, the group of people at the table had been laughing, their voices filled with mockery. Now, they were silent, stunned into a kind of awed disbelief. The woman they had ridiculed, who they had assumed was just another person in an outdated jacket, was suddenly someone they had to reckon with. They could hardly believe the gravity of what they had just heard. Sara wasn't just some random person in a worn-out jacket. She had served her country, earned her place among heroes, and had done things they could never imagine. The realization was slow to sink in, but as it did, the group seemed to shrink, the weight of their earlier words heavy on their shoulders. The jacket Sara wore, which they had once seen as a joke, was in fact a badge of honor, a symbol of pride, sacrifice, and the respect she had earned through her dedication and hard work. General Roberts, noticing the shift in the air, turned toward the table of quiet onlookers. His voice was steady, but it carried an authority that none of them could ignore. "Next time you think about mocking someone based on what they wear," he said, his words sharp and direct, "remember, there's often a story behind the clothes. You never know who they might really be." The group had no response. The playful mockery from before had disappeared, replaced by a profound silence. They were humbled, caught off guard by the unexpected truth they had just been confronted with. There were no clever comebacks, no excuses. They had been shown just how wrong they were. As General Roberts turned back to Sara, his gaze softened, acknowledging her strength once again. "Good to see you again, soldier," he said, with a nod of respect. His words, simple but sincere, carried the weight of everything Sara had accomplished. With that, the general walked out of the coffee shop, leaving behind a room that had changed. The chatter from the table resumed, but it was different now. The mockery was gone, replaced by quiet reflection. Sara, standing tall, felt a deep sense of validation, not through words, but through the simple recognition of her worth. The jacket, once a source of ridicule, now stood as a testament to her honor. And Sara? She wasn't just a woman in an old jacket anymore. She was a hero, proof that true strength doesn't come from the clothes we wear, but from the courage we carry inside. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a like. Your support means a lot and helps us keep bringing you more exciting content. See you in the next video.